Think building your own ChatGPT is easy? The truth may shock you. Every week I see another entrepreneur post about how they're going to build their own large language model. They've got the vision, they've got the excitement, they're ready to create the next breakthrough in AI, and then silence. A few months later, they've either given up, burned through their savings, or realized they were massively underestimating what it actually takes. Here's what nobody tells you up front. Building a custom LLM from scratch isn't just hard. It's absurdly expensive, incredibly time-consuming, legally complex, and ethically fraught. And for most businesses, it's completely unnecessary. But here's the thing. You can build powerful AI products without creating your own LLM. You just need to understand what's actually required, what the alternatives are, and how to make smart strategic decisions instead of following hype. So today, I'm going to pull back the curtain and show you exactly what building a custom LLM really involves. The real costs, the real timeline, the real challenges. And most importantly, I'll show you the smarter paths that can get you 90% of the results with 10% of the effort. By the end of this video, you'll know whether building an LLM is right for you, or whether you should be focusing your energy somewhere else entirely. Let's get into it. First, let's talk about why so many people are getting this wrong. The problem starts with a fundamental misunderstanding. When people say I want to build a custom LLM, they often don't really mean they want to train a large language model from scratch. What they usually mean is one of three things. They want to fine-tune an existing model for their specific use case. They want to build an application using an LLM. Or they want AI that understands their company's data and processes. And here's the critical point. None of those things require building an LLM from scratch. But because the terminology is confusing, and because tech influencers throw around phrases like "we built our own AI" without clarifying what that actually means, people get the wrong idea. You think it's like building a website or creating an app. You learn some skills, you put in some time, you launch. Done. The reality is wildly different. Building a true custom LLM training, a large language model from the ground up, is closer to building a nuclear power plant than building a website. It requires massive resources, specialized expertise, years of time, and the kind of budget that makes most entrepreneurs' eyes water. So let's break down exactly what's involved, starting with the most shocking number, the cost. Let's talk money first, because this is where the fantasy meets reality hard. Training a large language model from scratch typically costs somewhere between $100,000 and $100 million, depending on the size and capability you're going for. I know that's a massive range, so let me break it down. A relatively small model, something with a few billion parameters, nowhere near the capability of GPT-4, might cost $100,000 to $500,000 to train. That includes compute costs for the GPU clusters you'll need, the engineering salaries while they're working on it, and the infrastructure to support the training process. A mid-sized model that's actually competitive with commercial offerings, you're looking at $2 million to $10 million. And that's just for the training itself. Want to build something that competes with GPT-4 or Claude? Industry estimates suggest those models cost $50 million to over $100 million to train. OpenAI has said they spent more than $100 million on GPT-4's development, and that's probably conservative. And we're not just talking about a one-time cost. Training isn't a set-it-and-forget-it process. You need multiple training runs to get things right. Each major training run for a large model can cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Then there's the ongoing cost. These models require serious computational infrastructure to run. Serving a large model to users at scale requires powerful GPU servers that cost thousands of dollars per month in cloud fees, or millions up front if you're buying your own hardware. Stability AI, the company behind Stable Diffusion, reported spending over $50 million in compute costs in a single year. And that's for a company that already has an established product and revenue. For context, most startups raise their entire seed round for less than what it costs to train a competitive LLM. But let's say you somehow have the budget. Money isn't the only barrier, not even close. Let's talk about time. Training a large language model isn't a weekend project. It's not even a month-long project. For a serious LLM, you're looking at a minimum of 6 to 12 months from start to finish, and that's if everything goes perfectly. More realistically, it's a 12 to 24-month process, sometimes longer. Here's what that timeline actually looks like. First, you need to assemble a team, not just any team. You need ML engineers who specialize in large language models, data scientists who understand natural language processing, infrastructure engineers who can build and maintain the compute systems, and researchers who understand the cutting edge of the field. Finding and hiring these people takes months. They don't come cheap. Senior ML engineers with LLM experience command salaries of $200,000 to $500,000 per year, sometimes more if they've worked at top AI labs. Then you need to collect and prepare your training data. This alone can take 3 to 6 months. You need billions of tokens. That's trillions of characters of text. That data needs to be cleaned, filtered, deduplicated, and formatted. GPT-3 was trained on about 300 billion tokens. GPT-4 likely used trillions. Where do you get that much high-quality text data? How do you ensure it's not copyrighted material? How do you filter out toxic content, misinformation, and low-quality text? These aren't simple questions, and solving them takes enormous effort. Next comes the actual training. Depending on the size of your model and your compute resources, training can take weeks or months of continuous processing. During that time, things can go wrong. Hardware failures, training instabilities, unexpected behaviors that require you to stop and restart with different parameters. Then there's evaluation and fine-tuning. Your model doesn't magically work perfectly when training finishes, but you need to test it extensively, identify weaknesses, fine-tune specific capabilities, and align it to behave the way you want. And finally, there's deployment and optimization. Getting your model to run efficiently enough to serve real users requires additional engineering work. All told, you're looking at well over a year of focused effort from a team of highly skilled, expensive specialists. That's the time reality. And we still haven't talked about one of the biggest challenges, data. Let's talk about the data problem, because this is where most people's plans completely fall apart. To train a large language model, you need massive amounts of text data, not thousands of documents, not even millions. You need billions of tokens, roughly equivalent to millions of books worth of text. Where does that data come from? Historically, companies have scraped the internet. They've pulled text from websites, forums, social media, books, research papers, and every other source of text they can access. But here's where things get legally and ethically complicated. Is it legal to scrape and use all that data? The answer is, we don't actually know yet. There are multiple ongoing lawsuits against AI companies for using copyrighted material without permission. The New York Times is suing OpenAI. Authors are suing AI companies. Getty Images is suing Stability AI. Courts haven't definitively ruled on whether training AI models on copyrighted material constitutes fair use. If you build an LLM using scraped data, you could potentially be exposing yourself to massive legal liability down the line. And even if the legal issues get resolved in favor of AI companies, there's still the ethical question. Should you be using other people's creative work without permission or compensation? Then there's the data quality problem. Not all text on the internet is high quality. Most of it, frankly, is garbage. Spam, SEO junk, misinformation, toxic content, poorly written material. If you train your model on low-quality data, you get a low-quality model. So you need to filter and clean your data. But how do you do that at scale? How do you programmatically identify high-quality content? How do you remove bias without introducing new biases based on who's doing the filtering? These are genuinely hard problems that major AI labs with huge teams are still struggling to solve. And here's another layer: data privacy. If your training data includes personal information, private communications, or sensitive content, you could be violating privacy laws like GDPR or CCPA. You need robust systems to identify and remove that kind of data. Some companies are turning to synthetic data using AI to generate training data for other AI. But synthetic data has its own problems. It can amplify biases from the original model. It can introduce artifacts and weird patterns. And there's evidence that models trained primarily on synthetic data perform worse than those trained on real human-generated content. The data problem alone is enough to stop most projects in their tracks. Now let's talk about the ethical and legal minefield you're walking into. Building an LLM means taking responsibility for how it behaves. And LLMs can behave in problematic ways. They can generate biased content, reflecting biases in their training data. If your model is racist, sexist, or discriminatory in any way, that's on you. Companies have faced massive backlash for AI systems that produced biased outputs. They can generate misinformation. If someone uses your model to create convincing but false content, and that content causes harm, what's your responsibility? They can be used for malicious purposes. Scams, phishing, social engineering, creating fake reviews, generating spam. How do you prevent misuse of your model? There's also the question of alignment. How do you ensure your model follows instructions safely? How do you prevent it from being tricked into bypassing its safety guidelines? OpenAI spent years working on alignment and safety for GPT-4. They have a dedicated alignment team, extensive red teaming, and multiple layers of safety systems. And even with all that work, GPT-4 still occasionally produces problematic outputs. If you're a small team building an LLM, how are you going to handle these challenges? Then there's regulatory compliance. The EU's AI Act is starting to classify certain AI systems as higher risk, requiring extensive documentation, testing, and compliance measures. Future regulations might require AI companies to disclose their training data, prove their models are safe, or even get approval before deployment. Are you prepared to navigate that regulatory landscape? And let's not forget environmental impact. Training large models uses enormous amounts of electricity. One estimate suggested training GPT-3 produced as much carbon emissions as 5 cars over their entire lifetime. As climate concerns grow, the environmental cost of AI is coming under increasing scrutiny. These aren't minor considerations. They're fundamental challenges that can make or break your project. So at this point, you're probably thinking, okay, building an LLM from scratch sounds like a nightmare. What are my alternatives? Great question. Because for 99% of use cases, there are better alternatives. Alternative 1, use existing LLM APIs. This is the simplest, fastest, and cheapest option. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and others offer powerful APIs that let you integrate state-of-the-art language models into your applications for pennies per request. You get instant access to models that cost tens or hundreds of millions to develop. You don't need to hire ML engineers. You don't need massive compute infrastructure. You just need to learn how to use an API. For most businesses, this is the right answer. You're building on top of the best models in the world instead of trying to reinvent them. It's alternative 2, fine-tune an existing model. If you need your AI to have specialized knowledge or behave in specific ways, you can fine-tune an existing open-source model like Llama, Mistral, or Falcon. Fine-tuning means taking a pre-trained model and training it further on your specific data. This is vastly cheaper and faster than training from scratch. Costs are typically in the thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, not millions. Timeline is weeks to months, not years. You can create a model that understands your industry, your company's data, your specific use case without building everything from the ground up. Alternative 3, retrieval-augmented generation. RAG is a technique where you combine an existing LLM with a database of your own information. When a user asks a question, you first retrieve relevant information from your database, then feed that to the LLM to generate a response. This lets you build AI that has deep knowledge of your specific domain without any model training at all. You're leveraging the general intelligence of existing models and augmenting it with your specialized knowledge. Companies are building incredibly powerful AI products using RAG. It's become one of the most practical approaches for most business use cases. Alternative 4, smaller, specialized models. Instead of building a massive general-purpose LLM, you could train a smaller, specialized model for a specific task. Something that does one thing really well: sentiment analysis, classification, summarization, entity extraction. These models can be trained with far less data, far less compute, and far less time. Costs might be in the tens of thousands instead of millions. If you have a specific, narrow use case, this can be a smart middle ground. So how do you decide what's right for you? Here's my framework. Use LLM AP as if you're building most types of AI applications. You want to get to market fast? You don't have millions in funding. Your use case doesn't require absolute control over the model. This is the right answer for probably 95% of entrepreneurs watching this video. Fine-tune an open-source model if you need specialized behavior or knowledge. You're in a highly regulated industry where you can't send data to external APIs. You have the technical expertise and tens of thousands in budget. You need more control than APIs offer, but can't justify building from scratch. Use RAG if you need an AI that knows your specific information. You want to maintain control over your data. You need the flexibility to update information without retraining. You want the fastest path to a working product. Build from scratch only if you have millions in funding. You have strategic reasons why existing models absolutely can't work for your use case. You're building something fundamentally new that requires novel model architectures. You have 12 to 24 months before you need revenue. You have access to unique, proprietary data that gives you a real advantage. For everyone else, building from scratch is a vanity project that will burn time and money without giving you any real competitive advantage. Let me tell you something important. The companies winning in AI right now aren't the ones building their own LLMs. They're the ones building smart applications on top of existing LLMs. Look at Jasper, the AI writing tool. They didn't build their own LLM. They built a great product using GPT-3 and GPT-4 APIs. They hit $75 million in revenue. Look at Copy AI, Descript, Notion AI, GitHub Copilot. These are billion-dollar products built on existing LLMs. The value isn't in the model itself. The value is in understanding user needs, building great interfaces, solving real problems, and creating experiences that people are willing to pay for. You don't need to build your own search engine to create a successful online business. You use Google. You don't need to build your own payment processor. You use Stripe. You don't need to build your own LLM. You use OpenAI, Anthropic, or another provider. The AI revolution isn't about who can train the biggest model. It's about who can apply AI most effectively to create value. So let me bring this all together. Building a custom LLM from scratch requires millions of dollars, a team of world-class experts, 12 to 24 months of time, billions of tokens of training data, and navigating complex legal and ethical challenges. For 99% of entrepreneurs, it's the wrong move. It's trying to build a nuclear reactor when all you need is a power outlet. The smart play is to use existing tools strategically. Build on top of state-of-the-art models through APIs. Fine-tune when you need specialization. Use RAG when you need domain expertise. Focus your energy on creating value for users, not reinventing foundational technology. The companies that win won't be the ones with the best models. They'll be the ones with the best products, the clearest understanding of customer needs, and the strategic intelligence to use available tools effectively. So don't get distracted by the hype around building custom models. Get focused on building real businesses that solve real problems. That's where the opportunity is. If this video saved you from a massive, expensive mistake, or if it gave you clarity on the right path forward, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is dedicated to cutting through AI hype and giving you the real, practical information you need to build successful AI businesses. And smash that like button to help this video reach more entrepreneurs who need to hear this message. The algorithm rewards engagement, and every like helps more people avoid costly mistakes. Start smart, build strategically. And remember, you don't need your own LLM. You just need the right strategy. See you in the next one.